Hey guys, Pastor Mike here. I've been kind of sitting on my hands on something for a while. I've been concerned about, like everybody, about all the stuff that's going on in the Middle East, Iran, and one thing that's really saddened me is just for really, 12 years now or 10 years, all of the attacks going against not just Donald Trump, our president, but Biden after him, Obama before him. We seem to be really divided as a nation, politically and in every other way. And it's kind of the way things are going right now. And so I wanted to share my thoughts about leadership for a minute, especially about leadership in a nation. Donald Trump, when we look at him, there's really three things that he exudes: strength, boldness, and a willingness to act. And I don't think there's any question about that. And to me, leadership requires action more than anything else. And the actions of a leader are far more important than being liked, appealing to people's fragile sensibilities. It's about doing what is necessary. It's the unenviable part. We all want to be liked, but ultimately our actions are more important, especially when you're in a leadership position. Scripture gives us a pretty beautiful framework for this. In 2 Kings chapters 9 and 10, it talks about Jehu, who God appointed him and sent him to completely dismantle the house of Ahab and Jezebel. Now, we all know Jezebel, and he completely wiped them out. He wiped their family out. He wiped out everything about them. And here's the thing that people don't get, though. Jehu was not a godly man. Jehu was kind of the opposite of that, but yet God used him for his purposes. See, this is what a lot of people don't get, is that, and this should give us this perspective, that we don't know what's in the heart of any of our leaders. We really don't. And so we need to stop guessing. We need to start recognizing that regardless of where someone stands spiritually, God is still going to use them according to his purposes, because God is sovereign, right? Romans chapter 13, verse 1, it says, "There is no authority except for God, and the authorities that exist are instituted by him." That means that every leader that we have is either placed there by God or allowed to be there by God for the purposes that God is going to accomplish according to his sovereign will. That's very important. And we need to recognize that as a people, that God's sovereign plan, his greater plan, is all that really matters. Now, it doesn't mean that every action is righteous, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't second guess or blindly affirm everything. I mean, I've always been clear about that. But the reality is that we do need to recognize that the bigger framework of this, that God is at work, even when he uses imperfect people to do it. So those are my thoughts on not just our current president, but previous presidents. And I do want to take a moment, though, and I want to talk about what godly leadership looks like and what we should all be praying for our president. And I got four things. Number one, godly leadership acts with courage and conviction. When we look at Joshua chapter 1, verse 9, it says, "Be strong and courageous." A leader has got to be willing to act decisively, even when it's unpopular, even when people have their own agenda that oppose it. Doesn't matter. When you're the leader, you have to do what is the best thing, regardless of what other people think of it. And sometimes when you're a leader, you're doing things that are unpopular, even though they're right. Number two, godly leadership pursues the will of God above everything else. just reading about this today in 1 Samuel chapter 15:22, where Samuel was removed from being king, or Samuel removed Saul from being king. And what he did is he basically says that to obey is better than to sacrifice. In other words, you could do all these outward expressions of faith, but if your heart doesn't belong to God, it doesn't matter. And so you need to pursue God's will more than anything else if you're going to be an effective leader. The highest calling that any person has in leadership is obedience to the one that put us there. Number 3, godly leadership serves and protects others before itself. And this is one of the areas, honestly, I do support our current president with, because he is protecting not just the United States, but he's protecting the world, because what we have in Iran is very dangerous. And all you got to do is ask 91% of all the Iranians that are here in our country who are supporting his actions. This is a very important one. Mark 10:45, it says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve." See, leadership is not about self-preservation. It's about self-sacrifice. And one of the issues I have with our Congress is that I think we need term limits. And the reason being is because we have congressmen on both sides of the aisle who legitimately see their job description as keeping their job. That's it. My job is to stay a congressman. No, your job is to serve the people who elected you. And see, so they run into that problem where there's this disconnect, where they're serving themselves or not serving the people. And then finally, godly leadership is proven through actions, not words. Again, it's not about being popular. James 1:22 says, "Be doers of the word and not hearers only." We also hear in scripture about the Pharisees, who they would get down and they would pray in front of everybody for everyone to see, but it was just an outward expression and it didn't mean anything. They were doing it so that they could be looked at as being great and righteous, when in reality they didn't have God in their heart. Now I got to be honest with you. I don't envy our leaders. I would never want to be a president or anything like that. The weight that they carry, the decisions that they have to make, and the second guessing that they have to go through every single day. They're loved by some and then they're hated by the rest. And it's largely from people who don't know them, certainly don't know their heart. It's something that most of us will never fully understand. Even when you've been a manager or a leader, not in government, you still have people that either love you or despise you. And if they love you, it's usually because you're too much, you're enabling, you're not holding people accountable. But then if they hate you, it's probably because you're holding people too much accountable. It's a no-win situation. So here's what we need to do as believers. Pray for our leaders. Evaluate their actions, but regardless, don't be so quick to criticize those things that we don't know. Pray for them. Lift them up. Trust the sovereignty of God. Trust that God is in control, friends. And if you hate Donald Trump, for instance, you still got to recognize that God put him there for a reason, okay? And God's sovereignty is all that matters. God raises up leaders. God takes down leaders. And God is the one that is going to accomplish everything for his purpose through those leaders. For each of us as individuals, this call is very, very clear. It really is. We need to lead in a way that seeks the will of God, that serves others, that proves faith in action. And this has to do with whether it's your job, your church, your family, your government, or your own life. Anyways, I just felt like I really had to share these things. I jotted down a couple notes so I could keep myself on track and not go too long. But I love you guys, and just think about it. Just consider it. The next time you want to be too critical about talking about our former President Obama or Donald Trump or Biden or our congressman or your boss at work. Just think about that. I love you guys. God bless.